Welcome to the third season of the Global Architect Alliance podcast with your founder, Jason Boyle. This season, we are going to be asking architects in countries around the globe, what is it really like to practice architecture in these countries? Over the season, we will uncover the differences and similarities to practicing the profession of architecture between different continents, countries, and regions. Our third location is Karachi in Pakistan. Please share, subscribe, and comment to support the channel. Now a word from our sponsors.
Sounds for Sleeping is a new, dedicated YouTube and Instagram channel with relaxing ASMR videos to help you relax, study, or sleep. Please see links in this podcast for free sounds ranging from 1 hour to 10 hours of sounds.
So, welcome to the third season of the Global Architect Alliance. And our third guest is Ramiz Baig. Hi. Could you please just introduce yourself and tell me where you're located in the world and how long have you been in your current location?
Thank you, Jason. It's lovely to be here at the podcast. As you said, my name is Ramiz Baig. I'm a practicing architect, practicing here in Karachi, Pakistan, the hustling, bustling city of Karachi of over 20 million people. So I'm located here in Karachi, been practicing here, actually lived here all my life.
Wow, that's incredible. And I think my first question to you is, and people will be really interested in this, is in Pakistan, how long does it take to qualify to become an architect? And I know in the UK it's 7 years, but it might be different where you are.
That's right. So we have a straightforward 5-year degree. So there's a B.Arch, and you study for 5 years, and that's the only form of degree offered in the various schools in Pakistan. So there is no part 1 or 2 or any break or as such. Students are expected to do internships for 6 weeks, but that's all during the winter or the summer break, and they just go 10 semesters through. And it's very interesting here because in Pakistan you will find architecture being taught either in engineering schools or architecture being taught in art schools. So architects find themselves in a unique position where they're either too technical for the art school or they are like too artsy for the engineering school. So they're always unique in whichever setting they are. And so, for example, I went to the Indus Valley School of Art and Architecture. So that was predominantly an art and a liberal art and an architecture school. So we had in our 5 years, our foundation was uniform. So everybody, whether you are enrolled in graphic design or textile design or fine art or interior design or architecture, you did the same foundation year. So
Right.
that 1 year gave you that overall base, and then from there you kind of moved on to your specialization. And it will be, of course, very different in an engineering school because these art and liberal art courses are not offered, so that their trust is slightly different. So when you get graduates out in the market, it's very interesting to see that comparison. If which school have they actually come from, because their strengths and their focuses are unique that way.
That's a really interesting nuance there. I think that it's similar in some aspects, say for the UK, where you get some universities that are classed as being very good technically, And then, like you say, it's you get some universities that are known for their artistic, training and flair that come out. So I did not know that. And so that you do the 5 years, and then when can you actually call yourself and use the title architect?
Right. So then, of course, we have a regulatory body, which is the Pakistan Council of Architects and Town Planners.
Yeah.
So you have to register with them, and only after registration with them, you're able to legally call yourself an architect. And that happens now. It's actually we are undergoing that process, so it's still in its infancy. Now that registration is based on an exam, so you actually have to appear for a professional exam, and then upon clearing that exam, only then you can call yourself an architect. And this happens within a couple of years of graduation.
Okay. Okay. And I guess the question for people would be, it's interesting, I think, to hear from people from around the world is, what is the average salary that an architect can make in your country? And maybe we have to convert it to dollars. Let's say for someone who's been qualified, say, for 5 years, it's a tricky question for you to ask, but it's probably one that people are interested in.
Actually, because of the current scenario, this becomes trickier. So, Pakistan is currently going through some financial issues in terms of, we are losing a lot of value to our currency. There is hyperinflation all over the world. So, that is impacting us as well. And doubled by the fact that our currency is devaluing. So, it it is really posing a very difficult scenario where people's income, even though in numbers remain the same, but its value over the last couple of years has actually gone down because what you can purchase out of what you're earning has actually, as in the prices skyrocketed. So it's not, it's the value of the Pakistani rupee is suffering as a result. So,
Yeah.
say for example, like the first time that we met, which was in 2018,
Yeah.
Pakistan's value to the dollar was around 130 rupees. So one USD was about 130 rupees. Right now, it's trading close to around 220. So,
Uh,
just in like 4 years, there has been an exponential growth of that currency versus ours. It's so say for example, if somebody was earning um, what you could have converted as maybe $1,000 a month, say for example, automatically, they're not making $1,000 a month. That same amount is now worth $600 a month. So that's a big, big difference. And that is actually pushing a lot of younger architects and younger professionals, not just in architecture, but all around, to go into it on their own. So, you're seeing a lot more entrepreneurs coming out. You're seeing a lot of architects who are now working as contractors to, make more money that way. Seems that it's easier for the upcomers to make a better living while doing turnkey sort of projects,
yeah.
okay, where they are, along with services, they're also doing the construction and the build. So it's a very interesting dynamic what's been going on in the last five odd years, and it's going to take a couple of years more for things to settle down and for us to say, okay, what direction is it going?
Yeah.
So say maybe just to simplify, this discussion that we've had, say 4 years ago, a 5 to 6 year, experienced architect was making about 900 to $1,000 a month, and
Mm.
now because of inflation and all, that has gone down actually to say 600 or $500 a month. So
Wow.
it's sad that way. and
Yeah.
challenging.
I mean, is it just to finish off on that one? Is that seen to be a good salary in in Pakistan, for example? I don't know how it compares to a doctor's salary, for example.
Right. Yes and no. You see, there are, of course, discrepancies as well. So, again, Pakistan is a fairly large country, and the urban setup is very different to, say, the semi-rural or the smaller cities. So, you will have a lot of discrepancy in the pay scale. So, say, for example, maybe an architect in Karachi is doing a lot better than a doctor in, say, a smaller city like Peshawar or Rawalpindi, for example. But if you do a like-to-like comparison, I would think that doctor salary would be higher.
My next question for you is, it's what software do you use to design your building? And that software might differ depending on the various different design stages.
Right. Okay, so AutoCAD, for example, is something that is taught universally across all schools here. So architects get a very early, hands-on um, knowledge of that particular software, which they continue into it later as well. Of course, SketchUp has, become quite popular in the past few years as well. People use it to get their ideas across fairly quickly. I mean, and I'm speaking in terms of, the last 20 years. I mean, I actually graduated. I've been now practicing for about 20 years now. So, when I joined for my first job before I started my own practice, that was the largest office in Karachi, for example. So at that level, even there were maybe two or three CAD operators at that time, 20 years ago, and the rest was still happening manually. And you had these draftmen who were with that company for so many years, and they were truly artists. They could create these beautiful drawings and then I saw it in front of me how they started feeling, that pressure from the younger CAD technicians who didn't know much about the art of drafting, who did not really understand too much about what an architecture drawing is supposed to be, but they were so much quicker at adapting to the computer and being able to catch up. So I saw that tussle firsthand. And yes, of course, now it's all over. Now you do not find any office which has anyone doing hardly anything manually. And it's also funny because sometimes when I have a meeting with a client and I present them our printed drawings and they always ask, can we take these you know with us? And I have to tell them that, yeah, I mean, it's very nice of you that you're asking permission, but the value of the print is zero. I mean, when I used to make a drawing with hand, I would be very careful. Yeah, I have a photocopy or a copy, only that I would issue because that was so precious because you had actually put in so much time. But with CAD and with computers, I mean, you can just keep on taking that many printouts. And of course, Rivet is also trying to find its way here. So there are a lot. Autodesk themselves are trying to have official workshops. They're encouraging. So when I was chairing the Institute of Architects Pakistan Karachi chapter, so I had this initiative for the members where we were giving them these courses at a very subsidized rate, so that our members could get familiar with Rivet and try to take advantage of this modern software.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Yeah, the next question I have is, you said that you've got your own practice, and I'm just interested the type of work that you generally focus on.
Okay, so if I have to give a very simple answer, I would say the majority of our work is residential. But I would also like to give a more interesting viewpoint to it. In Pakistan or in generally in Karachi, with our practice, it's a lot more client based rather than project type based. So over the course of time, I've developed a repertoire with quite a few number of people who've enjoyed working with me, who've enjoyed the kind of output that I've given them, the time that I've given them, and the kind of design that I do. So maybe they came to me for a house initially, but say if they have an office building coming up in a couple of years, they would again come to me because they already have that relationship established. If they have, if they're thinking of venturing into, some sort of a fast food restaurant or something like that, these things have happened. They will come to me again. So similarly, it's really about relationships
Yeah.
and the networking that you have established and how well you value those relationships so that you want those people or people with those references to keep coming back to you.
Yeah, I guess linked to this next question is what you've said there. It's just I'm interested on how your practice does win new work, and maybe I can just preface that with how did you get your first client?
My first client is a very interesting story. So I told you I was working in one of the largest offices in Karachi, and when my first son was about to be born, and that is when I thought, okay, it's the right time before I get into the pamper bills and this doctor bill and that bill. Before I get bogged down, if I need to venture out onto my own, this is really the time because otherwise you just too many responsibilities for you to be able to take that risk. So I decided that I'm going to be on my own, and I went to just to meet my old boss, find out how he was doing. He was sitting with a couple of people who wanted to get their house designed. He, of course, it's a larger office. They were very busy, so they said, it was just like a matter of convenience. They said, this guy used to work with us for 5 years. He's excellent. He'll take good care of you. Why don't you get your house designed from him? So that's how it kind of started.
And is that generally how you keep winning more work? Is it based on your reputation?
Exactly. So, of course, right now, a lot of people would say that social media is becoming such an important tool in, projecting yourself and, using that means. I am still, in the mid about should I really go deep into that route or not.
Mm.
So far, yes, it has really been word of mouth. It has really been about almost like a 6 degree of separation. Okay, you design something for somebody, so then there's somebody who has visited and seen and they liked it, so then they would come to you and etc etc. So it kind of works like that. And it would be funny to see how that first project really is the catalyst, how that random encounter led to so many other things in the future
Yeah.
because this happened, so that happened, so that happened, so that happened.
No, it's incredible, and it's something that I think a lot of practices around the world really kind of the way they work. Sometimes it's competitions, sometimes
Yeah.
it's bids, pre-qualification, but reputation of the architect is, I think, it's always key. You know.
Competitions are fantastic way, and I wish that we had a lot more of them. In Pakistan, I feel that we just do not have as many competitions as there should be, because that is a fantastic way of new offices, of younger people to quickly make a name for themselves and establish themselves as like a serious party to consider. So that is something that we do see happen internationally, and we do miss it here.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. Absolutely is, and it must be very difficult for young practices that set up to try and win that work, and a competition's one of the great ways of doing that. Yeah, it's my next question is, I just want to understand what sort of contracts that you generally use, and do you take the lead role until it's built, or is it more of a as we say over in the UK, a design and build, where you'll prepare the drawings and it's sort of handed over to the contractor and you're not really involved. I'm just interested how that works.
So you will find various types of contracts as far as this is concerned. It also depends on the kind of who is the initiator of the project. So say if it's an individual who's getting his house made, so then he's coming to you, so he would expect you to take it all the way. So even though you are involved in a consultancy role, I mean you're supervising, rather you're reviewing the construction process, it is still the contractor's responsibility, but you are making periodic visits to make sure that everything is happening as per your vision and as per your design. Because the client trusts you, and that's why he's hired you, and he wants you to be that involved. The exact opposite is when there are builders who are investors who are just building for business. So then they, of course, are trying to do it quickly. They want everything in one go. They don't want you. There is no client as such for design review or for making changes or for moving things around. So in that regard, they would want to have a contract with you. Okay, look, it's upfront. You work on it for like the 2 months or the 3 months. You give us 1 to 100% every drawing, and then see you next time. So that also happens. So it really depends on who the initiator of that contract is and what sort of service is he requiring from you. And of course, I told you a new type is also taking shape, where these younger architects are also taking it on turnkey. So where they will be providing their design services, and then they're actually doing the contracting as well and taking it right to the end.
Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah, I guess they can keep that quality, from their initial designs right through till it's complete and hand it over to the client.
Yeah, I mean it's a tricky one, because there are some areas of conflict of interest, because architect being the still considered to be the master builder, as such, and it's your risk. So if you are the one who has to keep an eye on the contractor for his quality and for his time and for all of that, and if that is you yourself, so there is a little bit of a conflict of interest there.
Correct.
So, but what you're saying also makes sense. You have more control over the end product that way. And as the younger lot will point out to you, it's actually a lot more lucrative way of doing things as well. So
no, absolutely, and thanks for pointing that one out as well. My next question is probably quite a big one for you. It's what are the current environmental challenges that you're faced within your country when you're that you're designing for?
Yeah, I mean, I think now is as good a time as any to have this question, because as it was being reported, I think worldwide, that Pakistan suffered from like the worst case of flooding in this particular monsoon season. Millions of people were displaced. Thousands have died. Uh, Billions of rupees worth of damages to property, to crops, to agricultural field. And I mean, we're still trying to slowly restore things to normal. And this global climate change and all of this that we've been hearing about maybe since the time that we were in college. And we really thought that, yes, it's very serious, and yes, we should do something about it. But it almost had that feel that, okay, it's probably going to skip our generation. It's probably going to be the next generation which will really face the brunt of it, and we will probably be spared the consequences. But it doesn't seem that that's going to be the case. I think it's here. I think it's here in a big way, and it's time to, really wake up and figure out, what have we been doing wrong, how to rectify that, and then, of course, moving forward, ensuring that we do not make, all these mistakes. Now, it's very easier said than done because, again, especially in a large country like ours, which is fairly, an agricultural-based economy. So you have a lot of rural areas, you have a lot of villages where, the houses are not really made from um, permanent sort of materials. They are very prone to the weather conditions, and flooding can really create havoc for them. But because, as they say, mother is the necessity of invention, there are examples in Pakistan. There are many, there's some many senior architects are working towards that. Our institute is trying to, help there as well. There are at the ARCASIA level, there is this ARCASIA Emergency Architects, which has been set up with the sole purpose of quickly exchanging, knowledge and data. Because sometimes you shouldn't, when an emergency hits, you should not really be reinventing the wheel. You should not be spending time on that. You should be getting to action quickly. So, what is the best way? Where the best way is to where you have a universal database where you know that look, this work here, which is very similar to us. So if it worked here, it will work here. And look, this is an example. This is what they tried to do. It was very ambitious, but it did not work because of XYZ reason. So we should not be, attempting to do that. So that education, not only for the professional, but then the responsibility for the professional to impart it on the end user. It has to be done in a slightly different way. Otherwise, every time, like the flooding happened in 2011 at this scale last time. So it happened after 10 years. Maybe next time it will happen in 5 years. And maybe after that, it may happen every 2 years or something. So you do not have the time. You do not have that resources to rebuild again and again. So you just have to make sure that you do what works. So these challenges are there, and then looking at it. So this is like the philosophical, the bigger picture, looking at that. But then when you're looking at it at individual project level, so there are a lot of other factors at play. Like I said, I mean, the world over there is inflation, so prices of things are going up. It's impacting developing countries like Pakistan even more. So electricity, for example, has become very expensive. So everyone, even the people who were not thinking of these terms before, okay, oh, I have to have insulation, oh, I have to make sure that my glass has a particular UV rating, oh, I need to say, because, people who were not uh, feeling the pinch, even those people are now feeling the pinch because it has become really expensive. So this is, first, it used to be only the architect who was trying to push it. Okay, look, you should do this installation, you should do that. But now it's usually the first thing that comes from the client also. You know what? I wanted my room, my master bedroom, to be like this mansion size, but then I realized I would need like 4 tons of air conditioning just to, keep it cool in the summer. So no, I don't want that. I want a smaller room. I only go there to sleep. So I don't, and I just need that area to be cool. So I would rather have a space which is easier to cool, cheaper to cool. So, people are thinking along these lines as well, so which is good. Of course, whenever challenges come, creative people have to come up with better solutions, and I think that's where hopefully the architects of the country can rise to the occasion and deliver for the public.
Yeah, and I think the other thing, you've gone on about the sort of rain and the flooding, and Pakistan is there's different extremes. You've got the mountains, and the cold there, but you've also got this intense sun. and how you deal with sunlight, I think is probably is a real interest to people. It's how do you deal with this with that
Right.
intense sun?
Right. Yeah, I know. It's amazing, because I've got family in the UK, and whenever they would come to Pakistan, the first thing they would want is to. I mean, I can't show you, I can't turn the camera, but if I turn the camera this way, we are like about 200 feet from the shoreline. So the beach is just about 200 feet away in that direction. So whenever the relatives from the UK used to come, the first thing they would want is to be out in the sun and enjoy that sunny day. And we would be like, what's wrong with these people? We want to be as far away from the scorching sun as possible. And then when it used to rain here, we used to be like, I mean, the half the city used to be dancing in the streets, enjoying the rain, and then at the same time, they used to be like, oh, it's raining, let's get indoors, it's hideous weather, etc., etc. So those things, of course, vary. Yes, our sun is very harsh. The heat is something that we really have to deal with. And the biggest challenge, of course, is in a city scenario, is how do you treat it in a in a small piece of land? Because the original designs, the traditional ones that we have inherited and the ones which we know work have a lot of overhang. So there is something known as a veranda. So a veranda has almost become like a word in the architecture dictionary, which kind of comes from our part of the world, okay, where you have a room and then you have a semi-open space which is completely covered about 10 feet deep or something like that, completely blocks out the sun, lets in the wind, so it keeps the inside cool. So now, for example, one can say, yes, ideally, that's perfect. As long as you have 10 feet verandas on all sides, it's great. But hello, it's expensive. It's a city of 200 million people. You don't get that sort of footprint where you can have these, overhangs and verandas and all of that. So recessed windows is something that we do here a lot. Concrete jali, those concrete screens that we do to break the impact of the harsh sun. We do even wooden jaffries as well. Those are again wooden screens, pergolas. So all of these tools that we use, and they kind of also help in the elevation as well. So they become that very key tool, that standout feature that you can really work with, and that's something that really makes your elevation stand out as well. So that opportunity it provides, but yes, it is critical because those modern office buildings that we seem to have been inheriting from the West as well, just all curtain glass and all of
Yes.
that, becomes really counterproductive here because you're really increasing the heat gain of the building. So first you put that expensive glass, then you put even more expensive UV resistant films on it so that it kind of reflects back all that heat. And then you're increasing your air conditioning, which we are saying costs a lot. So, so that we think needs to happen. The plus side, though, is that now that solar energy is becoming, quite the thing to do. So we can really, a place like Karachi and most of Pakistan can really take advantage of solar energy. So because we've got sun, 80% of the air is blazing away. The efficiency of the system is fantastic. And what people usually worry about resources is, oh, it's scary. Jason also puts one, and I put one. Jason's gonna, steal all my resources, and I'll be left with nothing. But with the sun, I mean, you can put as many panels as you want. Jason can have 100. I can have 200. Doesn't matter. I'm still gonna get as much as I planned for. So it's unlimited. I hope that the government realizes this and creates a lot of subsidies for it because there's a lot of potential. It will take so much pressure off them to provide actually electricity for this growing country, and if every rooftop really, if you can visualize, has solar panels. Um, and we've used solar panels as shading devices for the roof as well. So instead of putting them flat on the roof, we put them like 7 or 8 feet high. So they
Yeah.
create like a shaded sitting area. Not only does it provide you the solar energy, but it also protects your roof from the direct impact of it insulates, it creates that as well. So, so these are the kind of things that we're trying to explore these days, and there is definitely a lot of potential in that.
Yeah, no, it's interesting you said that about, you could use them in a new design, and also you can retrofit them to existing buildings, and it seems to me is a really good solution. One of the solutions to help mitigate some of the energy issues that you face. Okay, it's the next one is, so we've gone through environmental challenges, but it's also, I'm really interested in the cultural issues that you encounter on a day-to-day basis, and just making it clear, it's about the cultural issues when you're designing and constructing a building.
Um, well, I don't know, but I think we should have like a similar podcast session where we can all discuss what contractors are like in every country. So, will we end up realizing that they're the same no matter where they are, or do we have a special breed, in different parts of the world? So, in terms of culture, I think Pakistan has this challenge for the labor force. That is something which probably maybe unique, or maybe unique to most developing countries, where the labor is mostly uneducated, and they're usually not skilled through an institution. They're usually skilled on the job. So, they kind of learn. So it's like the guy has been working on a site for a couple of years, and that's really where he's picked up, all his skill. So, I mean, there are of course schools, there are of course institutions where people can get these skills and become good at them, but they're not like the standard, and they're not in a majority. So that changes, that whole culture is, and I think that also lends to why architects are finding it successful to do turnkey projects, because the client or whoever the project builder is, he's getting an educated person to take him, all the way through, and he does not have to worry with the labor class as such, people who are difficult to communicate to. Sometimes even they don't understand the language, you're speaking, or they can't read the drawings, which are usually made in English, but they can't, read English. So these sort of issues are there as well. So culturally, from a construction point of view, I would say that this would be something which is different. Clients, of course, here are fantastic. Um, Pakistan, uh, I think architecture industry is heavily reliant on the elite even now. So you do get to meet a lot of people who have these, fantastical ideas of how they want you to create, their dreams, and then they have not only the resources to do that, but also the will and the time. So that way the culture is very interesting. You will get a lot of you will get a lot of family business. So say if you've come and you and your wife have hired me to design for you, and if things work out, which there's a culture that your first cousin would also want me to do his house and do it better than yours. So he would be like, his was 200 square feet here. Let's It'll be great if mine can be 250, or something like that. So you have those interesting things happening at times as well. Sometimes joint families are also getting their houses built, so those also provide very interesting input. So they would come separately, for their portion, but they would be more concerned in finding out what the other portion is looking like and what their requirements are. So that culture is also very amusing at times. I enjoy it. I mean, it can be fun. And people, I mean, generally, again, because it's a residential, I would say majority residential projects that we do, they become so personal. So you really are so heavily involved with that family for that 2 years, or that around that time, and you have to develop a relationship where you're almost like a confidant, and you're almost like guiding them or telling them, educating them sometimes, that maybe this is how you think you want to live, but maybe this is not how you would end up living. So,
Yeah.
build how you would live rather than how you think you may want to, because then that house may not not be something that you are comfortable in.
And just lastly, before we leave that one, are clients interested in, flexibility in the design? To say, rather than moving from what, like we tend to in the UK anyway. We'll move into one house, small house, they call them starter homes. Then we'll move into, the houses get bigger, or you move out from the city into the country, or is
Yeah.
it a case of whereby you will build your house and you will stay there all of your life and just adapt it? I'm just interested in that sort of thing.
You will get a bit of both. You have to realize that building a house is becoming very, very expensive here. So, the land value has skyrocketed. Of course, with the inflation, building materials have also become very expensive. So, it is becoming challenging from that point of view. But yes, keeping those things in mind, you will find people who are thinking of 20 years. So they're thinking of building today, but they've kind of mapped out what their family,
Yeah.
setup would be like for the next 20 years. And they're kind of building to say, to with minor adjustments or something like that, how can we make this house work for that
Yeah.
sort of time period? And of course, it's not always the case. You will always find, there's a lot of migration here. So you will find a lot of scenarios where this family has built, this it's a couple who have 4 children, and they've built this house for 6 people. And then out of those 6 people, they are assuming that two will get married and their families will also live there. But sometimes they're built like that, and sometimes they find out that when they went abroad for education, they never came back. So all of a sudden they have this huge house and there are only 2 people there. So, the dynamics can change. So yes, you can plan for the future, but having that adaptability is something that is, some people do put a premium on it. So say it would be a case like, look, design my house where I would like to stay on the ground floor, design my first floor for my son and his family if he chooses to live with me. If he does not choose to live with me, make it in such a way that I can rent it out so I can get extra income. So, you get these sort of requirements as well.
Oh, that's fantastic. That's really interesting. Yeah, it's I think it's something that we in the UK need to consider more. That the changing family needs as you move through your stages in life, rather than moving house all the time. Okay, the next one is, are you a member of a professional body? I'm guessing yes. And if you are, how do they help you in your sort of day-to-day practice?
Right. Okay, so you are aware that I am a member of the Institute of Architects Pakistan. So that is the primary body, other than the regulatory body, which is PCAT, for architects in Pakistan. It is through the Institute of Architects Pakistan that we are members of ARCASIA, of the Commonwealth Association of Architects, or to SARCH, which is like a South Asian one, to UIA, which is international. So I have been heavily involved with IAP in the last decade. I have served as the honorary secretary for the national body, and I have served as the chairman for the Karachi chapter. So these positions I've held. And then through IAP, I was also the honorary secretary for ARCASIA, which is the Asian body. And it was through the event that we organized in Rome. That's where, we got to meet when we did that workshop in Rome with Marconi University. So these were fantastic opportunities. I mean, to be honest, IAP really gave me that platform where I could interact with architects all over the world, and it gave me that credibility. It's that is that organization that you serve, and it really, if you serve it well, it really does open doors. You get exposure to so much. Um, it was only through that the Arcasia opportunity came about, and it really is the it really opened the world. I mean, we were doing events or attending events in over 20 countries in those 2 years. So, that was a fantastic time where you're interacting with the fraternity, with like-minded people, with architects from all over the world, and people that you never thought that you would. People that you actually never thought you would actually see their work. Not only did you see their work, you actually interacted with them as well, given the opportunity. So yeah, I think institutes are important from that point of view, especially for, any younger architects who are listening to this, that they really help you, find your footing in terms of your you're almost bouncing off the credibility of that organization. So, say if you're working in a large office, if there are 100 people in that office, that networking aside, all of that, maybe that office can somewhat help. But if you're not, then the institute becomes such a critical place. And now, what our institute is trying to do is come up with co-working spaces. You know how COVID has really changed how people are expected to work. So the institute is coming up with these co-working spaces where the people who are just starting can actually rent out at a very good rates, and they
Yeah.
don't have to worry about your office expenditures and space like that, and really focus on design. And then when you are starting, so you're just one person, or maybe you're two, or maybe you're three, so when you are in a collective where there are 50 other people like that, so that energy, feeding off ideas, learning from each other, all of those things can help uh, you with that education after school.
Yeah.
So either you get it in a big office, where you kind of slowly learning the ropes, but that takes its time, and that's one way. But this way, when you are in a shared space, so, and of course all the activity that the institute does, it really keeps you connected with what the other architects are doing. There is no other way other than the institute. If their audience is so much larger, the
Yeah.
access to not only the entire country, but to the whole world through their affiliations.
And I'm guessing the institution, as well as, it's a really interesting idea of the co-working within the Institute for Young Architects, and that's something I would fully support and hope it continues. And I'm guessing that this continuing professional development, is that something that your institution assists with, essentially?
Exactly. So the PCAT, the regulatory body, right? So the one that I mentioned earlier, which you need to register with for your license. So
Yeah.
they have IAP, which is the institute. They are the executive arm of that regulatory body. So for you to now renew your license, you have to have CEP points, CPD points. You have to have that continuing education program development and all of that. So yes, IAP is the body which is organizing those workshops, which is organizing those seminars, which is organizing those trainings, that rivet workshop that I told you about when I was sharing the one that I introduced for the members, that also had weightage for CPD. So it all added towards that. So yeah, the institute takes this job very seriously, and they are there for the members and ensuring that they do get their work from this membership.
Yeah, it sounds like a very similar setup to what the Architects Registration Board do and what the RIBA do. So it's that's absolutely fantastic. So similarities, yes, absolutely. My next question is, it's what are the is where do you, I guess, where do you stand on this long working hours culture? I know you work in practice. You're a business owner, but I would, maybe it's something. I know you also do some teaching at the university. So I'm just wondering, what is that sort of long working hours culture like, and what are your thoughts on it?
I think that could be like a whole podcast on its own, right? I mean, if you start, especially from this teaching perspective, because I've been very closely associated with the Indus Valley School of Art and Architecture. That's my alma mater. That's where I went to school. But after that, I also, I mean, step by step, I was the president for their alumni association. So I saw the school from the alumni point of view. Then I also got the opportunity to serve on their executive committee, which looks at all the implementation of how the school is run. And after that, I was only the second alumni of that school to be inducted on the board of governors. So which is looking at the policy making of the school and looking at the school, in the next 25 years and the next 50 years, where do we want this going?
Yeah.
And along with all of that, I've also been teaching part time. So I've taught studio for a good number of years, and I've taught this course called Professional Practice and Project Management, for which we even had you as a guest speaker for I think 2 years now. So I've seen in this institution and thus the culture. And when I think back of my time as a freshman in architecture school, it was almost like this thing, you're in architecture school, so just you're gonna move in here. You're never gonna go home. You'll be working all night. You will be doing this. This is the way it happens. There is no other way. And I mean, you are kind of in an impressionable age, so you think, okay, yeah, it happened this way. My seniors are also here, and you're also doing the same rut and falling in the same sort of cycle. You have uh, dark eyes in the morning, trying to force yourself up with a shot of coffee to be ready for a presentation. And now that you've seen it with the hindsight of experience, and then seeing it from a teacher's point of view and from a school's point of view, you almost wonder that, I mean, was that just working hard, or just working under the influence of the culture, because it really wasn't working very smart.
Yeah.
And I mean,
Yeah.
long hours. When I was working in that office that I told you about, there used to be a lot of people who would stay back late just so that the boss would see them, and they would get impressed. Oh, look at this guy. He's working late and this and that. And these things even then used to annoy me. I mean, the working hours are 9 to 5. I've done my job, whatever part of my assignment was for that day. If I finished it, I finished it. What's this hanging around later just for the sake of it? So I
Yeah.
find this culture to be a bit overrated, and I teach that to my students. As long as you're doing justice to your work, don't cut corners. As long as you're giving it your all, I mean, I mean, I would be more impressed if you did a fantastic presentation in the morning, and then after it's done, you told me that, you know what, I got 6 hours of sleep last night. That's impressive, as opposed to this other chap who does well, but he says, you know what, sir, now I have to rush back home because I haven't slept for 2 nights. So it's a little bit of a give and take. So I do try to teach them that it's not bigger than your health. It's not bigger than your well-being. And these long hours have I mean, computer-aided design has really helped in that aspect as well, right? I mean, whether, when at midnight when we used to sit and we kind of be done with our design and we're ready to make our model for school, I mean, no matter how good or bad the design was, it was going to take the whole night to make that model, right?
Yeah.
And to realize it at about 5 o'clock in the morning that, you know what, this is not turning out good at all. It used to be heartbreaking like anything. And I remember the panic and I remember, feeling bad about that. So at least with computer-aided design, at least I think that's what SketchUp has really helped with. Very quickly you can do these volumetric studies. So you do have in an hour or in an hour and a half, you have a very good idea of what your project is going to be aesthetically like, and you don't have to actually spend that entire night doing that. So I think people listening, my verdict would be that I'm all for working smart as opposed to working long, long hours just for the sake of it.
Fantastic. No, fantastic. And just to add to that as well, even now when I go in and I do crit work with a university in Manchester, I'm always amazed at the students putting all this work into the presentation, into the design, and they spend very little time preparing for what they're going to say in the presentation or the timing of the presentation. And I keep telling, I see this repeating every single time and every single year. And I'm trying to impart on the lecturers to say, please tell your students of architecture to spend at least, 30% of that time on preparing the presentation and what you're going to say, because that can make the difference, the big difference.
All the difference. And you think COVID helped in that? Because I felt it helped that aspect of it. Because they had to choreograph, all the presentations became online, so they literally had to choreograph their presentation. And I felt that they kind of improved on that. They knew exactly, what they're displaying. Of course, the drawback was you could never see the entirety of the presentation at one time. But the good part was that they were really focused on what they were showing on the screen. So sometimes when students used to just, get a little bit off track and not really be focused on what they should be, I felt that these COVID-driven presentations online, it really helped the students focus on what's important. They have to make sure that they make the best of the time that they have. So I hope now that they've gone back to in-person presentations, I hope that those lessons have not been lost and they are doing the same streamlined sort of work in their presentations as well.
Absolutely. I hope so too. Last couple of questions is, it's what are the biggest challenges that you face running, or in your case, leading a practice? What are the biggest challenges?
Well, the biggest challenge, of course, in a small setup is how you are responsible for the business as well as the design. And architecture students or young architects really do not have, that education given to them in school, at least, what running a business is like. So this is something that you kind of have to learn the hard way. Sometimes, in the day-to-day running, I really miss that studio environment. So whenever that opportunity happens, when you're focusing on the design aspect of the project, so I still love that. So it's not something that you lose. I mean, yes, it's fantastic to have these, CEO level meetings, and you're looking at the big pictures, you're discussing budgets, feasibility, all of that, big numbers. But I think deep down inside, we're all those, we are creatives at heart, and the real joy of the profession still comes. And for me, that happens really after office hours. So when the business time is over, that is really when I get to go to my creative mode again and in my design mode again, and really sort out the direction to hand on to others. Okay, this is how we want to move into in this project, and this is what we want to do. Because in the day, the challenge is you're juggling calls. I mean, you are um, troubleshooting, you are trying to get business, trying to seal the deal, and the creative process has to kind of take a backseat, which I miss during the day, and I absolutely love it. When the music is on and your creative juices are flowing, almost feels like you're back in school. So you kind of connect with that older part of your life.
Fantastic. And my next question is slightly different. It's your biggest frustrations about practicing as an architect as well.
I think the frustration as an architect, I think kind of is a continuation of what happens in architecture school, at least here, and I am quite sure it happens pretty much everywhere. So is that effort versus reward scenario. So, we've all, like we were discussing, we've been up countless nights working on presentations, working on a design, falling in love with it, thinking it is the best thing that could have been produced. And then, not getting that reward in return in terms of either it was a grade or it was a jury that you couldn't convince. So those sort of setbacks or frustrations can actually happen in architecture practice as well, where you've done really well. You think that you have this is the best way this project should be going, but you are not able to either get the project for XYZ reason. So that effort of yours is gone, or that effort is not being compensated with the kind of fee that you should get, or thirdly, you're not able to your version is not accepted 100% by the end user, by the client, and you have to make some changes or some compromises that you're not 100% on board with. And you fight the fight, because it can't be a fight, because it has to be a dialogue. It has to be that is really where your people skills come in, because you have to get your point across. You have to tell them in a very professional yet firm way, okay, you've hired me for my expertise, and I'm saying this way is the way to go because of this reason. And I expect you, in your better judgment, to respect my call, because that's why you've hired me. And sometimes, when those things are disregarded for a whim, okay, oh no, we saw it at XYZ's house and we want it that way. I mean, what does that XYZ house has to do with your project? Nothing. Those are completely different things. They're doing something for a. So, those challenges can be frustrating at times. And I have found that because of our dealing with our teachers, our dealing with our jury members, and then our dealings with our clients, I think it kind of helps us become well-rounded individuals. So yes, the frustration in the long run helps you maybe become a more well-rounded individual, which I think maybe your wife would be very happy that you are. Your children are happy that you are. So there are some benefits to that learning as well. I mean, I remember, my children. Well, not my children; they were really young at that time. But we were being interviewed for the most prestigious school for my children to go to in Karachi. And I remember my wife being, really scared. Okay, oh my God, how will that interview be like? What if they ask this? What if they ask that? It's going to be, I'm, sweating. I'm petrified of what's going to happen. And I told her, relax. I've been through architecture school. Nothing in that interview can be worse than, all that we've gone through, with our juries, with our clients sometimes. So architecture, I mean, it's different. I mean, it's not like if you're trying to blow our own horn as such, but architecture education really does give you such a well-rounded sort of exposure to different facets of life also. So it's an
Yeah.
education in life as much as education in design or as education in planning, etc., etc. So I mean, Alhamdulillah, very grateful to God that this is the profession that I chose and very happy to be in.
No, I love that answer. I love that answer. It's fantastic. My last two questions. One, you've really answered about the social media and how you use that. But let me just twist it slightly and say, you've got these web apps like Pinterest and your Instagram. Our clients coming to you now and seeing a fantastic building and saying, "Oh, I want one of these."
Yeah, it happens all the time. But in all fairness, I think Pinterest and Instagram usage has helped the client verbal communication or
Mm,
communication in general with us because first they could not visually share what they were thinking. So yes, they can share like 15, 20 different ideas. At least you understand, what visually they're thinking because we take for granted I'm speaking to you and you're speaking to me and we're speaking in a language that we're both familiar with as architects. So we're not worried, okay, is my point not getting across? But that is a genuine issue when you're speaking with clients. So I feel visually these tools have helped. I just have, it's like an ethical issue, really. It's almost like you are, you're like kind of selling almost like a product. And I don't know if there is anything wrong with that or not, but at least the way, we were at that cusp late 90s, early 2000s, getting our education. And we were almost on that threshold of old school versus new school. So I do find, that clash within me also. I absolutely uh, understand the benefits of it, and I've seen people benefit from, selfless promotion um, all over, social media of this, that, that project, or all of that. And at the same time, I feel that we are professionals, like how lawyers are, how doctors are, and I mean, no brain surgeon is like putting up videos of his the latest microscopic incision and plastering it off on all over social media. So I'm actually looking for an answer to this as well to help me because there is a part of me that wants to for the improvement of my business. I want to embrace that. Yet I'm also skeptical if I do not completely respect others doing it at the moment. How will I then, judge myself? So I'm looking for the answer, and I will not only, I mean, of course, I will be listening to other people's podcasts in this series, but I will definitely be looking out for this answer and see what others have to say and what their opinion is on the matter. Because
yeah.
it is something that I'm still trying to come to terms with.
I think that one of the best ones you can look at is our first guest, Russell Henderson. Him talking about architecture and being based in Tanzania, and it's I think people are genuinely interested. Yes, in the way he films and edits his ideas on architecture, but I think a lot of it's to do with being in Tanzania And I would love to see, you know, a similar thing happen in Karachi, and maybe
Right.
something you can, you know, work on, or have some students work on that, because I don't think we see enough of the day-to-day process of an architect in a place like a country like Pakistan, for example.
Right.
Yeah,
No,
it's
no, true. That aspect of it is definitely worth highlighting. I mean, there is something to share with the world, right? So
mm,
then, like I said, I have to find the answer that's right for me,
yeah,
and maybe working on holistical overview of architecture and not specific to my own. Maybe that may be a good way to start, and then you can get comfortable with the idea as you go along, and then you can start.
no,
Also, I mean, there's another drawback, by the way. So we have intellectual property problems there as well. Another aspect of it that scares us is if that has happened. I've seen visuals of my projects being copied and pasted on somebody else's, social media profile saying, "Hey, this is our project," and stuff like that. And there is really not much you can, do about it rather than complain. I mean, how many are you going to stop? So there are people who are not even qualified. Like I said, now getting business through social media is relatively easier than word of mouth because all of those things are based on reputation on what you've done. On social media, yes, you've got fantastic stuff as well, but you also have the opportunity where people are taking other people's things and just packaging it and saying, hey, look, we can do this too. So
wow.
that's something to be wary of as well. So that's another aspect that kind of worries me.
Yeah, that's a bad side, definitely. Okay, well, that's really interesting to know. The last question I have for you is, what is the best thing about practicing architecture in your country?
Okay. So say, for example, I mean, this is again from an outsider's perspective. So whenever I visited European cities, so generally wherever you go, they kind of look complete. It looks like this was done 200 years ago, and it kind of is kind of like the finished product. There is not much to do. And when you look at, you know, places like Karachi or other cities in Pakistan, you still find that that identity is yet to be shaped. So that opportunity still being there, okay, to contribute toward what the urban, outlook of Karachi is going to be like, and have your own little, footprint in there somewhere. I mean, that is fascinating part of the developing world like Pakistan. Here, you also have a lot of independence. I mean, if you get, like I said, because you develop that rapport with your clients, so when they come to you, you do have a lot of free hand, and you do have larger holdings sometimes also, where you're working on houses which are you know up to 15,000 square feet sometimes. So,
Wow.
they can be massive houses. And, having that liberty, having that opportunity to design multiples of those um, is something that you don't get to hear too much of in the developed world as such.
Yeah.
So the opportunities are still here. Like yes, of course, as we move to the future, things will change. But one can say that the architectural history of London, for example, is pretty much written. Uh, as in, yes, of course, things will are modern buildings are coming up, things
Yeah.
are being replaced, but there is I mean, when you think London, you do get that picture of something, and that has been there for a while. But our architectural story is still needs to be written. So that is a very interesting way of looking forward to here, that there is a lot to do.
Thank you for listening. Please support the Global Architect Alliance by subscribing and sharing this podcast. Please also leave a rating. For more information on what the Global Architect Alliance does, please visit globalarchitectalliance.com. We will see you next time.